Well, as you guys are aware, I'm going to try to make some videos for the next couple of weeks since we won't be able to worship together in person due to this whole coronavirus situation. I know that these videos aren't great. I know that I'm not particularly good at them, and I'm doing this from my house, which means there's a pretty good chance that one of my boys is going to interrupt me before this is over, and if they don't, the dog probably will. But we're all in this together, and this is the best I can do for the time being, and all we can do is try to make the best of it. So here goes nothing. So I've really wrestled this week over what to preach on. For those of you who were able to attend worship with us before all this stuff hit, we've been doing this series on Adam Hamilton's book entitled The Walk, 5 Essential Practices of the Christian Life. And I've really gone back and forth with what I should talk about. Should I talk about something else this week because everything that's going on, and just kind of forget about this whole series altogether, or should we keep on with this Lenten study and see it through? And this week I decided to continue in our series, and that's largely because of the particular spiritual practice that we're looking at. It's service. This could change next week, I don't know, but for now, here's where I'm at. And since it's been a couple of weeks since we were together and talking about this book, I thought we all could use a bit of a refresher. The first spiritual practice we looked at was worship. We talked all about the importance of true and genuine worship, which at its core is simply just telling God, thank you, and I love you. We do this together as a group in corporate worship, and we should also worship on our own through prayer, multiple times a day. And then we took a look at the spiritual practice of listening. We talked all about the different ways in which God speaks to us, both directly and indirectly, or scholars refer to them as special revelation and general revelation. If we pay attention, we can see God all throughout creation, right? We can see God in others, and we can even see God in things like the arts, music, and literature. But because we're human, we can also completely miss God in these things, or we can completely misunderstand God through these things. And that's where that direct communication from God comes in, or again, as scholars call it, special revelation. God speaks directly to us through the scriptures, if we will only read and study them. But without a doubt, the most direct way in which God speaks to us is through the person of Christ. God himself, in the flesh, Jesus. Whatever we know about God, whatever we read in the scriptures, whatever we feel through songs or see in creation has got to be interpreted through the lens of Christ. Our understanding of God must, at the bare minimum, look like Jesus. And this week we're looking at the spiritual practice of service, serving others. As Hamilton points out in his book, the word serve, or some variation of it, appears over 1,000 times in scriptures. God's primary mode of working in the world is through you and through me. God desires to work in the world through us. And I'm not talking about sharing your faith or telling someone about Jesus. We're actually going to talk about that later. It's the 5th spiritual practice we'll look at through this book. I'm talking about actually serving. Things like feeding the hungry and helping the poor and clothing the naked and caring for the elderly and looking after those in need. Actually being the hands and feet of God in the world. I think a lot of times we think all God wants from us as Christians is to read our Bible, to pray and go to church and do our best and not to do anything bad, right? God wants us to try to just not do bad stuff. And that's about it. But that's not it. God calls us to do good in the world. All throughout the scriptures, God calls us to act justly, to practice kindness, to love deeply, to care for the needy, and to look out for the widow. All of these are calls to action. They're not things we shouldn't do. They're things we should do in the world. Think about the life of Jesus, how he spent his time on the earth. Almost his entire ministry was devoted to spending time with the poor, the marginalized, the second class, the people that everyone else looked over. Those are the people that Jesus spent almost all of his time with. And he didn't just talk to them, he met their needs. Jesus even said himself in Luke 4 that God sent him for the poor. He said things like, it's not the healthy who need a doctor, it's the sick. As we've talked about several times, I even talked about this in the first video I sent out this week. According to Jesus, love is central to the Christian faith. Love God and love of neighbor. Jesus said the most important commandment is love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. As Hamilton says, this love is not a feeling, it's a way of living. We practice it towards others, all in an effort to seek good for our neighbor. To bless, encourage, care for, and serve our neighbor. That's what this love looks like. Again, as Hamilton says, to walk with God, to be a follower of Christ, is to be a servant. When we serve others, we become more and more and more like Christ. And one of the biggest reasons I think this spoke so profoundly to me this week is because of the situation that we're in with this coronavirus. Right now, all over the world, we have people only thinking about themselves. They're stockpiling goods so that they have more than they need while others do without. And we, as followers of Christ, we're called to think about others. We're called to serve others. And right now, more than ever, at least in my lifetime, we need to be the hands and feet of God in the world. Our neighbors need us to serve. It may have to be in new and creative ways now, things we've never done before because of this virus shutting everything down and social distancing and all that stuff. But we still need to serve nonetheless. It could be something as simple as a phone call, checking in on someone you know who's taken this isolation thing harder than others. It could be checking in on to be sure one of your neighbors has enough groceries to make it through. It could even be something as extreme as sharing a roll or two of your beloved Charmin with someone who you know needs it. And it could certainly look like only getting what you need at the store so that others are able to get what they need as well. Whatever the case, however we do it, we are called to serve others. As followers of Christ, we are called to serve. So may we do just that. Even in these trying times, may we serve. I challenge you this week to look for a way in which you can serve. And in doing so, may you truly be the hands and feet of Christ in the world. I love you guys. I miss being with you guys in person, and I hope you have a good day.